One of the most important things when you're taking care of plants is the lighting that they're getting, because a lot of plants really need that really bright light, and I'm sure this is how like string of pearls work, string of hearts, all that sort of stuff. They'll kind of just take the brightest light you can get. But the problem is a lot of people tend to just not have them in bright enough spots. And I can't really show you my string of pearls and how to take care of that because I killed the only one that I got, but I'm going to give you a houseplant tour of where all my plants are sitting and what kind of light they're getting, what kind of conditions they're in, all that sort of stuff. And I hope that it helps you take care of your plants if you have similar ones to mine. So let's hop into it. And I apologize right now for the lighting in some of these shots because I'm gonna keep the light all natural today so you can see what kind of light these plants are getting. But yeah, it's just gonna be some weird shadows in some places. So the majority of my plants are in my main room and specifically on this bookshelf right here. And this bookshelf goes all the way to the ceiling, but these are like the majority of them right here. And they're all getting the same type of light, which is mostly from this side, like window slash door right here. And so, you know, the direction of the light kind of matters when it comes to plants. And lots of people will say keep your plants in a southern facing window because that's usually where the most sun is consistently throughout the day. So this window is facing the south. But that doesn't necessarily mean that like it's getting southern light because it actually goes out to a balcony, so there's not like that southern sun coming in the entire day. Now the sun that is coming in is actually from the west, so that means that the residual light kind of hits these plants, and this actually, after like some trial and error and kind of watching how my plants grow in the direction that they grow, it seems that this is the brightest spot for them other than like right in front of my other windows, but they actually pick up a lot of that residual light coming in from that western light. Right here on this mid shelf is probably about where most of the light goes because it's not like cut off in any way, and it's probably the least like cut off from the sun or the light that's coming in from this side. And on this shelf we have this silver striped philodendron, which is one of my favorites right now just because it's been putting out such pretty growth and just like consistent growth as well, which is just really fun. And then I did actually move my string of turtles here, and let me get this closer so you can see. But I moved my string of turtles there. It was previously on a windowsill across the house a bit, and it's been doing really well in this spot. And as you can see, it's grown quite a lot from when I had it initially. You can probably see it in one of my past houseplant tour videos. But this is one that like, they thrive on brighter light, I found, but they can do with like, not quite as bright light, which is kind of nice because then you don't have to limit it to one spot. And just because I love showing off my plants, here's the silver striped philodendron, and here is probably the most variegated vine, and it just, I mean, come on. It's such pretty growth, and I just love the kind of white cream tones that come out in it. This is one of the ones that I do need to propagate to like try to get more full in the pot because I mean, it's only trailing off one side right now, but I can't bring myself to propagate it because if the growth comes in and it's not as variegated or not as nicely variegated, I'll be so sad. Now, another plant that I have on this shelf is actually my Hoya publicalis, and this one has been growing like crazy. The little tendril that's coming off here has been vining and wrapping around everything it can find. But this one, it hasn't put out any leaves yet, but I don't think that that's uncommon for Hoyas. I think they take a while anyways to put out some leaves. But yeah, this one's been doing fine. I haven't had it in any other spots other than this bright light, and I would call this light probably like bright to indirect bright light. It's definitely not direct light, but it's probably just bright indirect light. And it's been doing great there. It's been growing like crazy. Like this entire tendril is new from when I bought it like a couple months ago. So yeah, I'm not sure if they're usually like low light plants. I don't really have any low light places in my house other than my bathroom, which gets no light. But it seems like it's liking this bright indirect light, so I'm gonna keep it there. And then before I put this away, I also have some recently propagated micans on this shelf. I've kept other micans, not micans cuttings, but I've kept other cuttings on these shelves and they've done great. So I figured let's just do the same thing with the micans and we'll see how they grow. And I'm not gonna move the camera because I just can't reach it if it's taller than me, but we have the shelf above, which has my golden pothos and then a marble queen pothos, and I'll get them down to show you. So this is my golden pothos, and I actually had him in a different spot when I first came here and he was hardly growing at all. I had him still next to this window, but out of the like direct sunlight that comes in. And I'll show you that section like next and we can dive into that a bit more. But since I've put him in the bright indirect light, first of all, he started putting out a bit more variegation, if you can see that, on his leaves, on like specifically the last 2 leaves that he's gotten. So it seems like he's just putting out more variegation, which is how you get more variegation in plants, is raising the light levels. but it's also just growing a lot quicker. So I'm really happy with that, and I'm glad to have found a spot that he seems to like a bit more. And then here is the Marble Queen pothos, and it actually I think needs to be watered. Yeah, definitely needs to be watered. And he's also in that bright indirect light. But what's interesting is I expected it to put out more like white variegation on his leaves, but it's still giving me like pretty speckled growth. There's one leaf back here that's like pretty much all variegated, but you know, I'm not super unhappy with that because I don't want the like leaves to all die off, and if they're all white, they won't be able to get like photosynthesized with the green bits as much. So yeah, I'm not too unhappy with no variegation changes on this one. I like how it is right now. But yeah, it's been doing quite well. It doesn't grow super quickly, but that might just be the species. And then you can't see the top shelf, but on the top shelf, I've had this philodendron, just a regular Hartley philodendron, and it's been doing fine. I would probably move it to have it grow better because it hasn't been growing as fast as you would expect a regular philodendron to grow. And just while it's up there, it really reaches for the light since it's like higher up, and just for some reason the light doesn't come in that way. It kind of angles down more so. So it's probably in not as bright indirect light, just probably like lower light even. But you can see like that's why it's trailing so much right here. But then at the top it's quite bare, and it's just everything's kind of reaching for that. And I could fix that by like adding more propagations in, but I think it would just do better in a better spot for it. Okay, now let's take a look at the lower shelves. Okay, so now we're down here at the lower shelves, and this one, I mean, it's the bottom two shelves right here. And this is probably where the brightest light kind of happens, mostly at this top shelf right here. But on the bottom shelf, I have this Scindapsus, and I also have the cuttings from that in this plant right here. So yeah, I mean, they've both been doing really well. I have had this one in a different spot before, but it seems like it's putting out bigger growth like quicker now, so it seems a bit happier here. And then I also have this Hoya Crimson Princess, which isn't actually staying here. I picked it up for a friend, so they're gonna be picking that up in like the next week or so. So it's not staying here, but it's been doing fine right here, but I've only had it there for like a week or so. So it like, yeah, it's doing fine, it's growing, but I don't know if it would do better elsewhere, so we don't really know. And then up here I do have my string of hearts, which I just propagated a couple weeks back. And I mean, it's doing pretty well. The only note I have is there's quite a few leaves at the top that aren't doing super hot. And I think that's because it's not getting enough direct light right on top of it. Because in my old apartment, I used to keep it on a windowsill, and it got, you know, just all that direct light right at the top. So it was really full and lush at the top, and like there's still lots of leaves there, but it just isn't as full as it used to be, and probably as it could be. And then we have this Philodendron Macaulay's Finale, and this one's growing. It's kind of giving me some wonky leaves that I've been trying to save and stuff, but I mean, it is growing. Yeah, I don't know how happy it is, and I don't know if that's the light or the watering situation or what. But yeah, I try not to move him around too much just because I don't want to shock it with like a different environment completely. But yeah, he's starting to grow a bit faster, so maybe he's starting to adjust and actually liking his spot there on the shelf, but I don't really know. I can't really tell with this one. And then we have a couple cuttings, and then up here we have my Oxalis. And this one I've moved around quite a lot to kind of just experiment with and stuff, just because, I don't know, just it's a bit of an experiment plant. But this one has actually grown a lot since I put him in that spot. I had him in a bit lower light conditions a couple weeks back, and I only moved him, like I said, a couple weeks ago, and he's already put out like 3 new stems. And I mean, he's obviously reaching for the light because that's where it's facing, but I don't really mind that very much, and he's gonna do that no matter what. So yeah, I've just kept him on that shelf, and it seems like he's been pretty happy there. And while we're down here, actually, we're going to move to my floor plants that are just to the left of me. Okay, so over here is kind of like my storage area for my plants. I have tons of like pots and all that sort of stuff on the ground over here, but I also have my 2 like biggest plants, and the first one is kind of peeking in over here. It's my Bromarx Philodendron, and he's been growing quite a bit, but really only out of like 1 shoot. Yeah, all the growth is coming from 1 stem. You can see the newest leaf right there. He's so pretty. But he's been doing pretty good. Like, there's nothing that I can see that's wrong with him. And I'm not sure why none of the other like bits are growing. It's just coming out of that 1 stem, but who knows, that could just be a thing for right now and it will start growing next week. I really can't tell with this one. And then another recent one that I've put here like in the last week or so is another Scindapsus cutting like pot that I put together. And this is quite like a full pot of it, which I'm happy about. I love little full pots. But I put him here and he's not growing a ton right now just because I recently potted up the cuttings and they're probably gonna take root first before growing. But it seems fine and it should do fine because I know these plants can even handle lower light, so should be fine. And quickly, this section for my plants is getting light from this window right here that you can see that's like blinding out the rest of the scene. And that is a west facing window. And that is pretty bright light, but it's really only super bright towards the end of the day, you know, when the sun's setting. And then last over here is actually my ruby ficus. And this one's been doing pretty well, actually. Let me show you the other side real quick. There we go. I'll just kind of get out of the shoot for you guys so you guys can see that. But there's actually new growth consistently coming in now from each of those stems. And you can see the top leaves are the newest and they're actually finally getting like quite a bit bigger, because before, I don't know if you've seen like my Instagram or anything, but before they were pretty small. Like you can see it's a tiny little leaf there, but they've just consistently been getting bigger and bigger, and I'm so pleased with that because I love this plant and I just wanted it to grow more. And I'm actually gonna stay out of the shot for this one so you guys can actually see the plants. But you guys can see the top rows right here, and there's a bunch of them at the bottom here. You can kind of see the Scindapsus down here. There's a bunch still lower. So we're gonna start kind of left to right. Actually, first of all, this is right next to that south-facing window, and then it's also picking up light from the big west-facing window over there. So it's probably one of my lower light spots, but it's still getting a good amount of decent light just because the windows are so big. Anyways, we have first up here is a Philodendron Birkin, and I only recently moved him here because he used to hold my begonia, and my begonia is just not very happy, but we'll cover him later. So yes, we have the Birkin up here now, and he's been doing great actually in this spot. Yeah, he's actually putting out a new leaf and everything, so he seems to be liking it up here in this lesser light. I had him in some brighter light before, but seems like he's doing better in the low light. And then below him, we actually have this Pearls and Jade Pothos, and this one is growing as well. You can see he's fining off on that side. I need to paint this pot. It's a bit boring right now, but he's been doing really well. I have lost a couple of leaves, like yellowing and brown tips and that sort, but he's been doing great. And then in the darkest spot over here, because it's kind of tucked away in between some plants, so it's like in the shade a bit, is my Scindapsus trebii Moonlight cuttings, and it's actually getting a new growth point over here. And yeah, he's been doing good, but like I said, he is in like the darkest spot over there because he's covered by so many other plants that are kind of just like giving him some shade. But I have the other plant in some brighter light and he seems to be doing well as well, but we'll get to him in a couple of plants. Then another new plant that I've put over here recently is this Pepperoni obstifolia, and this is from a couple cuttings that I had. Yeah, and he was in some brighter light before, and I think that kind of burned the leaves because I think in the wild these usually grow in like more shaded conditions. So I think he's gonna do well here. He hasn't started growing quite yet from like his cuttings, but I think he's doing well, and he's got this really pretty leaf up here, so I'm loving him right now. Okay, and then next is actually one that's picked up in growth quite a bit since I first got him and since it's been like summertime and everything, but it is the main plant of my Scindapsus Moonlight, and this one you can see the new leaf right here, and then it's got a vine off the side right here with a new growth as well, and then actually on the back here there's a new growth point coming in right here. And yeah, I'm super excited about it. I think he's gonna continue to do quite well, and look how great he looks in that pot. I just got this pot, so it's a good little matchup. But yeah, he's got brighter conditions than the cutting that I have of him, and I mean, I don't know if he is growing faster actually, definitely. Just barely started picking up, so I'm super happy about that. And then behind that one, we have my Exotica. Here's the Exotica, and he's been going a bit crazy lately just because he's kind of been vining off and doing his own thing over here. But yeah, he's been liking it as well. I don't know if he grows quite as quickly as he used to, but I don't think that's the light, to be honest, because the lighting hasn't really changed with him at all. But he's putting out consistently bigger and bigger leaves, so it seems like he likes it there, so I'm not gonna move him really. And then below that, and this one, we're getting closer and closer to the window over here as I go like along here. Below that I have this Brazil. And this one hasn't grown a ton since I got him, so I can't really say that like, oh, he's doing fantastic compared to where he used to be or anything like that. But he's got a lot of yellow variegation, and the leaves are still putting out quite a lot of yellow in the new leaves even, which usually means that they are in a bright spot and they're, you know, they're happy because they're putting out new growth. But yeah, it seems like it's doing well, and yeah, I'm happy with it really. Then we're gonna get to this stand right here. This is my strawberry begonia, and I don't think I've quite figured out the best care for this one yet. I mean, it's doing fine and it's not dying, but it just doesn't seem to be growing as quickly as one would expect a begonia to be growing. It might be that it's root bound in its pot. It might be just the light isn't good. It might be my watering schedule. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, I'm not really gonna like fret with it at all because I don't really have time to right now. So he's doing fine. I probably just need to do more research on him to figure out the best lighting for him because it doesn't seem like this lighting is the best. And then I'm gonna scoot the camera over so we can see some of these other ones. Okay, so then the next one is this watermelon peperomia, which I'm not gonna move because he's kind of tangled up with this other one back here. And yeah, I might not move that one either, but this watermelon peperomia, it's still not doing fantastic. I mean, the leaves crack every time there's a new leaf, and they're just, yeah, they're kind of torn up, but I still just like him a bit, to be honest. But actually, if you can believe it, he used to be doing a lot worse. Like, these leaves are tons better than they used to be. So I'm super happy with that because these leaves, like this flat one particularly in the front, used to be completely curled up, even though it wasn't a new leaf or anything. So yeah, I think he's doing better. I just think that I still need maybe some more time with him to figure out what exactly to do to make it even happier. And then behind him, I'm not going to take it off just because it's kind of tangled up right now. This is a Peperomia Hope, and you can see these big leaves down here, and you know, that's what all those vines are back there as well. Those are all Peperomia Hope vines, and it's growing like crazy towards the light. I don't know, the leaves are kind of far apart, like on the stem, like that's pretty far of a gap in between those leaves and stuff. But I think it seems fine. I'm just gonna kind of leave it and not fret too much about it because that's when I usually tend to over care for my plants and they do end up dying. So I'm gonna leave it for now. It seems fine, but yeah, who knows? We'll see. And then down below that, we have this Philodendron Birkin, and this one is going a bit crazier. I do need to rotate it a bit more because right now it's leaning towards the light. But yeah, it's not really putting out more variegated growth since it's been in the light. But like I said, I'm not too fussed about that because the other one that I have is pretty variegated, and I like the green on this. So yeah, I'm happy with him, and he seems really happy because he's putting out new leaves, as you can see over there. And yeah, super excited about that. The plants I have closest to the window are this obstifolia that I have over there. And as you can see, he's kind of putting out a lot more like variegated growth up here, which is super exciting. I love the little marbled growth that he's been getting. But yeah, he seems to be happy there. He does need to be watered quite often because he's so close to the light, but I don't mind that too much. And then I also have some cuttings that I've recently put over here to try to grow them really quickly. This one is just a Philodendron Brazil, and it hasn't started growing quite yet, but I literally just potted them up a couple weeks ago. And then the other one is a Hartley Philodendron, which again hasn't quite started growing yet, but I potted him up the same time as that other one. But I'm excited for him. He should grow quite quickly. And then last, for the plants that are like floor plants, I have this like, I don't know what material this is, but I have these ottomans from IKEA that I just stacked up so they're a bit higher. And I've started taking it over and putting plants on it. So I have this obstifolia just in a pot, just a small one. And I just barely moved him here from like a really bright spot. So I'm hoping he does better in like a less bright spot. And then I also have this lemon lime maranta, and he's been doing well. This is the first spot that I had him in to start with, so I haven't really moved him around very much, but he's been growing and I haven't watered him quite yet, but I think he's getting there. Okay, so now we're moving on to this big hanging rack that I have. I do need to move a couple plants out of the way in order to get there. Okay, so we've got, closest to the camera, we have my Philodendron micans, and then we have my bigger, it's a bigger regular Hartley Philodendron, and this one actually grows quicker than the one that I have on my shelf. Which is why I think the one on my shelf would probably do with some brighter light, because as you can see, these are right next to the big western facing window, so it's very bright here, and they probably get the brightest light, with the exception of course of my windowsill plants. But yeah, he's doing a lot better in that spot, and I rotate him periodically to get him to be a bit more even on either side. And then down here we have my Philodendron Brazil, and this is my original Brazil that I've had, so it's probably one of my oldest plants here. And he grows like a weed, honestly. I always have to chop him up, and actually I think I need to chop him again, but he started trailing. He's got lots of growth points down here, probably like 6 vines or so. And then over here, I'll take him off so you can see. I have my Neon Pothos probably closest to the window, and he grows super quickly as well. When I got him, I think he was only to like right here, and that was only a couple months ago, and now he's all the way down here and is putting out new leaves like crazy. But yeah, he's in a super bright spot, and yeah, I like him a lot, and I think I'm gonna keep him there. And I did have to rotate him a couple times as well, but as you can see, I kind of stopped doing that. So it's super bare on this side, but this side's super full and nice looking. So I don't know, you win some, you lose some. And then let me roll this out of the way because there's wheels on the bottom, which is super convenient. And then we'll take a look at the windowsill plants that I have. And also I'm not really including cuttings in this video because they're not always in like the best spot for the plant. So yeah, I'm not including cuttings in this video because they're not getting the right type of light that plant needs, but it's getting enough light for the propagation to root, I guess. But yeah. Okay, so here's the windowsill. It's right next to my computer, so ignore that. But I keep all of my cuttings basically on this windowsill, and then I put some plants that are either like starter plants or just, you know, spare plants that I've ran out of room for. I keep them on there as well. But on my desk, actually right next to the window, I have this neon heartleaf cutting that I just planted up, but there is a new growth point coming in, and so he seems to be doing well there. But yeah, he's not permanently here. It was just kind of, I didn't have any more space for him because I am running out of space like crazy in my apartment. And then if we start little right to left here, right here I have my little hybrid Pepperoni cutting like jar. I don't know. This was from my cutting jar that I had with all my peperomia in it, and I have a ripple, a watermelon, and then a pilea actually in here. The pilea isn't doing great, but I don't know anything about that plant. It was just a random cutting that I got. And then the ripple, I know it has leaves on there, but there's no new growth coming out, but the watermelon is actually probably doing the best. And if I can show you, look how cute that little leaf is. I'm so excited about it. This does dry out pretty quickly because it's on the windowsill, but I mean, I water it then. And then right next to that, I have another little pot of propagations. I have some of the little offshoots from my strawberry begonia, and they are like healthy, they're alive, but I don't see any new growth quite yet, but I'm excited to see if there is new growth that comes in. And then I had a peperomia frost cutting in here, and the main leaf rotted away, but I knew there was roots like in there, so I didn't dig anything up. And look what I found. There's like tiny little new leaves coming in that are peperomia frost leaves, and I'm so excited because I wasn't sure if it was going to actually grow again after the main leaf died off, but you know, sometimes it'll surprise you, I guess. And then actually I will include this one in this video. I have an avocado tree just sitting there that I rooted a long time ago, and I know I should pot it up, but I just don't really want to right now. It's got like what, 4 or 5 leaves and then some on the way up here. And it's been doing well. It took a while after these main batch of leaves to grow these new ones up here, but like I said, he seems to be doing well. There's tons of roots down here and they're just getting bigger and bigger. But yeah, he's doing good, and yeah, no complaints. He hasn't really had any issues. And then next to that, I have one of my string of hearts pots that I potted up from a bunch of cuttings that I took. And this is one that I wanted to keep on the windowsill when they're young, just to make sure that they get like really full and they've got a lot of growth at the top. But yeah, he's doing great. And I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from a string of hearts being on a windowsill, honestly. Is another string of hearts propagation that I have. But this one is older, so it's growing a bit more off of the pot. And it's also got, if I can show the camera, it's also got my variegated string of hearts in it up here. So yeah, I'm waiting for that to start putting out more growth. But it looks really healthy, so I'm excited to see how it does. I think it needs to be watered soon, but it's so hard to tell sometimes with these, so I'm leaving it for now. And then next to that, we have my Peperomia Rosso, just a tiny little plant that I grew from a cutting, and I'll do a video about that later, just because it's one of my favorites, so I need to include it in some sort of video. But yeah, it's just a plain little Pepperoni Rosso, and then I have a couple string of turtles cuttings in here that I don't know if they're gonna survive. There's just a couple leaves that dropped off, but we'll see, but he's doing great. And then next to that, I have another tiny string of hearts propagation. Is just 3 vines, and that one's growing as well now. It's only recently started doing well, but it's in a tiny little cup, basically. But yeah, he's cute, and I just haven't repotted him because I think that having plants like that are just kind of cute sometimes. And then next to that, and this is the last one on the windowsill, is my African violet, who I haven't quite figured out yet. I always feel like so dumb when it's an easy plant that, you know, is like considered like a common house plant that's super easy, nobody can kill it, all that sort of stuff. And I have a hard time with it because I'm having a hard time with this plant. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm hoping this new spot, because I just moved him here, I'm hoping that does better for him because I think it's really cute, but who knows. And then there's only 2 other spots that I keep plants in this room, so we'll go through those and then I'll show you the last couple plants. So just real quick, on my desk next to that big window, the west facing window, I do have these 2 Marantas, and they're doing great. You can see there's a bit of browning tips, but that just does happen sometimes. I do think that this light might be a bit too intense for them because their leaves are so aggressively going downwards during the day and they're not folding up as much, but I don't know, it was kind of a bit of an experiment for me, to be honest. And then lastly, and sorry, this light is terrible, but this is probably the darkest light that I have over in this main room. So I would call this low light really. But these are my, not reject plants, but these are the rehab plants over here. And that's any plant that's not doing so hot. As long as they don't really need bright light, they get moved over here. And that is my Begonia Immaculata. I don't know what's wrong with it, but I'm taking care of that today. That is my little Ficus elastica that's just in water right now, and he was having a hard time, but he seems to be bouncing back now and putting out lots of new growth. And then I have a bunch of cuttings from my Pepperoni scandens because he was struggling as well. And yeah, so I had to move into a spot that was a bit, nothing could really happen that was too extreme, like no extreme light, no extreme heat, whatever. And that's something I actually didn't cover for the rest of these plants. None of them are in direct stream of like the AC like vents or anything, because that kind of can mess with plants sometimes and really be detrimental to them to have them in that direct current of airflow. So now we're in the last room of my house that I have plants in, and this one is a big window in my bedroom, and it's a western facing window as well. So it's getting a lot of bright light, but the brightest light comes towards the end of the day. And this one, I have this Scindapsus, the same Scindapsus from the main room, but it's just another cutting. And this one actually isn't doing as well as those other ones. And I think it might be because it's in such bright light, but it's interesting to see, like, it grows slower. It's not growing as full. Yeah, it doesn't seem quite as happy, but it's still doing fine. And then next to that is my little Frankenstein pot that I have, and that has Micans, neon heartleaf, no, there's no regular heartleaf in it, actually, scratch that. It has a Micans and a Brazil Philodendron, and then one of those Scindapsus from my main plant that I have. But yeah, this one has been doing super well in this spot, actually, and I'm super happy with it. I think it's getting super full super quick, and I wasn't expecting it to do that well so soon, so I'm pleased. Then next to that, I have this Pilea, I think it's a Moon Valley. It's one of those ones with the really textured leaves. And yeah, he does well here. He's growing and everything. It dries out so quickly. So I just have to be careful that it doesn't die basically while I'm watching it. And it has a telltale sign, like the leaves actually just like physically droop over, and the stems do as well when it needs water. But yeah, it dries out super quick being in the sun, but I think the sun will bring out more of that like red variegation that those leaves sometimes get when they get more mature. And then next to that, I have my little baby Monstera deliciosa, and this is actually one that never has really been a super fast grower for me, but it's actually putting out 2 new leaves, and I'm just super excited for the leaves to get bigger, and hopefully one day I can keep it alive long enough to get fenestrations on the leaves, but for now, it just looks like that and has these little heart-shaped leaves, but that's still fun for me. And then the last one in this room is my neon heartleaf that's on my trellis, and this is one that I chopped up not too long ago. And when I chopped it up, it actually gave me like 3 new growth points, which is super exciting. But the new growth on it is actually like massive compared to the old growth that was there. Cause like I used to consider this type of leaf and this size leaf like really big, but now we've got these leaves, and I hope that's the new standard for the size of the leaves, but I'm super excited. But it seems like it's been liking the really bright light a bit more than where I had it before, because where I had it before was, it was still good light conditions, but it just wasn't quite as bright. And then last but not least, I do have my Pepperoni scandens over here away from the window because I had it in a really bright spot before and the leaves were not doing well. So I chopped it all back and I'm testing it out with low light and seeing how that does. I'll keep you guys updated though on that. But those are all my plants, guys. I hope you enjoyed and thank you so much for sticking around for my houseplant tour. And I hope this helps you take care of your houseplants a bit better, or just, you know, you can kind of tell maybe what might be going wrong, because lighting always isn't the quick fix, but for me, it's kind of been a lot of trial and error, and it's still a lot of trial and error, as I'm sure you picked up from this entire video. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.